Before starting Unit 3, we're just going to review some of the information you'll need to know about angles and triangles. You'll have learned this in previous years, but it's always good to do a little refresher. First of all, this triangle here is a right triangle, which means that this angle in here, if you remember, is 90 degrees. So a right triangle has one right angle, which is 90 degrees. And the next thing to remember is when you have a triangle and you add up all the different angles, like A plus B plus C, you'll remember that they total 180 degrees. So if you know two of the angles, it's easy to figure out the third angle. Just add up those two and then subtract from 180. So if you know that this one over here is 45, and you know that this one over here is 65, you can easily figure out what the angle A is by adding up 45 and 65 and then subtracting it from 180. So remember, adding up the three triangles in a or the three angles in a triangle is always going to equal 180. And another thing to remember is when you see a triangle with these little lines on it like this, that means that those two sides are identical. They're the same distance, they're the same length. One more thing to remember is something called supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are on a straight line like this, two angles on a straight line. You know that if you add the angle A and the angle B together, you're going to get 180 degrees. So if you know one of the angles, it's easy to figure out the other. And similarly, you could have complementary angles. So complementary angles total 90 degrees. So these two angles here, A and B, are going to add up to 90 degrees because this is a right angle. So if you've got a right angle, you know that the two angles need to add up to 90 degrees. So A and B equals 90 degrees. These are complementary angles. And so therefore, if you know one of them, if you know A, you can easily figure out B, or if you know B, you can easily figure out the other one. You're also going to need to remember how to name angles or how angles are named. So in this triangle, if we're going to name this angle here, we're going to call it ACB. So that would be angle, and this is how I would write it, ACB. You could also call it angle BCA. Angle BCA. And similarly, this angle is going to be called CAB or BAC, and this one here you can figure out easily will be called CBA or ABC. So I'll just write that down. So this is angle ABC. Now the last thing I want to review is the Pythagorean Theorem because you're going to be using it often in this unit. Now the Pythagorean Theorem is related to right triangles, that is, triangles that have one right angle. And you can see that in this triangle, this is the right angle here. That's 90 degrees. And what the Pythagorean Theorem states is that this side length A squared plus this side length B squared, and A and B are on both sides of the right angle. If you add those together, they're equal to C squared, and C squared is the side opposite the 90-degree angle. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So that means that if you know any two side lengths of a right triangle, you can figure out the third side length. So as an example, if A is 3, and let's just use random units here, it could be centimeters or meters, then that means 3 squared. And let's say side length here is 4, B is 4, so that's 4 squared. That's equal to C squared. So we're given two side lengths, A and B, and we can determine C. 3 squared is 3 times 3 is 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. That's equal to C squared. So we add those together. 25 is equal to C squared. And then we use our knowledge of square roots to determine what C is. So the square root of 25 is equal to C. So C is equal to 5. So in the Pythagorean theorem, if you know any two side lengths, you can determine the third side length by using this formula.